How do you find courage to take that leap to achieve the life that you want? On this episode of The Culture Hack, we have Mark Groves, author, speaker, and human connection specialist. He's going to share all the science, all the information that you need to understand how to do that. Stay tuned on The Culture Hack. Hey, it's Adam here, and you're watching The Culture Hack, where we're talking about how to create engaged workspaces that unlock the potential of your teams and drive your business forward in ways you've never seen. So stay tuned. Mark Groves, welcome to The Culture Hack. Thanks so much for coming on.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, I am very excited. Mark, you are, of course, the self-proclaimed human behavior nerd, prolific speaker, author. There's so many things to talk about you, but tell us a little bit about yourself to kick us off.
Yeah, I mean, being a nerd of human behavior is not a professional title, but it is a professional level obsession. I've always been really fascinated with relationships, with really more so understanding my own. When I was young, I would sit down on the couch with my dad and talk about, the things I was navigating. He would ask me so many questions about my relationships, which is probably very different for a lot of people.
Yeah, I'm thinking of my dad, and
he wasn't asking you
no.
that. Yeah,
I asked him once. I took a leadership course, and they were like, "You need to ask better questions." So my dad came in the kitchen, and I was like, "Hey, what was the best thing that happened to you today?" And he looked at me and he said, "I don't have time for your voodoo," and he left.
That's what he said.
Yeah,
that's funny, but also shitty, but funny. I was lucky in that my dad would ask me so many questions about everything. And I would come to him with a lot of my relationship challenges. And, he's very gregarious. He's super outgoing, managed stuff at the university at the foothills. And so he knew everybody. I'd walk down the halls with him there. And it was like Staying Alive was coming on. He'd be like, "Yo, what's up? Hey, Bob, how you doing? Sandra, good to see you.
Yeah.
How are the kids?" And so I really just through osmosis learned his incredible ability to build rapport very quickly. And, you don't realize you're getting an education in that point. But that really is a large part of my work too, was, hey, we're not taught how to be exceptional at relationships. And by design, of course, the first job I ever got was actually through my dad's connections to the pharma industry. I was a salesperson at Future Shop while I was in university. So if I sold you an extended warranty, I apologize in hindsight, but I made good money off them.
Yeah.
And the crazy thing is, you don't realize, like, Future Shop's sales training, when I first started, was like a really aggressive sales training. We were taught 9 different ways to close people. Our manager would stand beside us when we were closing. And then if we didn't get extended warranty, they'd be like, "Go try again." So it was very much trial by fire. And although I hated a lot of those moments and I resented a lot of that pressure, it really built a really good skill set. But the skill set that I was using in sales, which sales is, and that's not a bad thing, but sales is behavior modification, right? It's manipulation. But if you sell someone something they actually want, that's good. But sometimes you could sell people things they don't want. And then they feel pressure and they might come return it after. So I was obsessed with understanding relationships and how to influence behavior. I was reading things like pickup artistry books, like all the stuff. And I remember I had this book on my bookshelf that I was so proud of. It was called How to Get Anyone to Do Anything.
Okay.
And like how to win friends, influence people,
Sure,
all that stuff. Yeah. Anyways, I was really good at sales and I loved it. And I went through a breakup in my late 20s. And I wondered to myself, why am I so good at every relationship but romantic ones? Why am I so good at talking about everything but my feelings? That's not a skill set issue. There's actually something more going on. And I didn't really ever think about something more before that. And I really think this is what, might be alluded to in the voodoo world as an awakening of sorts. It's really, why do I do what I do? And why am I who I am? And why do I have the habits that I have? And why do I have the defensiveness or whatever it might be that comes up relationally? And I would see that in teams. And I mean, I especially see it now because I'm more attuned to seeing it. But I would see these challenges in teams that really, when I looked at it, they were just core wounds being triggered. And everyone in a human system takes on a role. And we tend to go to the role we're used to, whether it's family or corporate. And so as I was going through this breakup, I wanted to understand, why did I feel more connected to myself than I ever had by leaving this relationship? And yet I felt so judged by society. I felt like a failure in the perspective of, like, I ended a long-term relationship with someone who was really incredible. I just didn't want to get married to them. And I didn't know why I didn't want to, because it didn't make any sense. On paper, she was like exceptional.
Yeah.
And that was really hard for me to reconcile. So, in order to try to soothe the dissonance, I wanted to figure out, maybe on some level, what was wrong with me? Like, why did I feel good, but yet do something that other people perceived as bad? And then I started to look at the way we're taught about relationship endings, that you should never get divorced. People who get divorced are shamed often.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so I started to see that what was supposed to be something I wasn't supposed to be proud of was actually one of the most powerful invitations to my own growth. And instead of doing things unconsciously in my life, I started to learn about the unconscious. I started to think, like, oh my God, 95 to 99% of what we do is unconscious. Like, who's been driving? Like,
Right? It's like, this seems important.
right. So I started to study romantic relationships. I dove deep into the science of it. I mean, I was in pharma, so I really loved data and studies. So I started to do that. I started to study positive psychology. I was really fascinated by this idea of, instead of trying to figure out what's wrong with people, which can be helpful, but why do certain people thrive? Why does two people going through the same circumstance end up in very different places? What is it about the person who thrives, about post-traumatic growth? So as I'm studying all that, I'm studying my relationships, and I'm really like, why did no one teach me this? Like, I've got to start writing about what I'm learning. So I started to really use my writing as a way of excising my shame about who I'd been, what I didn't do well, my engagement ending, times that I'd cheated or been cheated on, and how I handled grief. And it was really this opportunity for me to take these experiences that were really painful and turn them into not just teaching for me, but teaching for other people. And people really connected to that. And I would say I was probably one of the first people really writing about relationships, probably especially as a man. Not the first, but one of the first. And I happened to be dating a woman who ran a social media for like pubs and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
And she was like, you should start an Instagram account. And I was like, what's Instagram? Isn't that for like photographers or something? So we broke up, and I was like, all right, I'm going to use the fuel of this breakup. And so I started an Instagram account. I started writing. I would post a quote, then write what I thought and felt about the quote. And people would be like, oh, you can't write long form content on Instagram. It's not for that. And I was like, all right, tell me again what I'm not supposed to do, because that seems to be a condition of most people's lives.
Right.
But now it became this, like, I became a bit rebellious when I was given limits like that. And it started to do well. I was working at the same time doing consulting within our own organization, teaching the science of influence. So I was developing it professionally, and then I was working with people personally. And then eventually the personal side just got so big. And I had an incredible manager who, I remember her saying to me, I know one day you're not going to be here, and I'm really excited for you. And she's like, because like, I really feel like there's more out there for you.
Mm-hmm.
How can I help you achieve that? So she actually helped get support from the company for me to take a program on positive psych.
Wow.
I know. And when I would fly to New York once a month for the on-site part of it, I was like, do I need to take vacation? And she was like, no, just have your iPad with you and like just be available. But better to ask, what is it? Ask for forgiveness instead of
Then
permission.
permission. Yeah.
And she was just awesome. And so having someone like that, when she just said, give me lots of notice.
Mm-hmm.
So when I finally left, I gave her like 6 months notice. And it was kind of like our little, sorry, I just outed her to the leadership team, but it was like our little secret. She's since moved on from that company.
Yeah.
But when I left, I mean, it was a massive leap of, which I think is such an important leap that everyone faces many times in their life. But it was one of the most significant to really step out of the paradigm of what I was taught was a safe life. I was in, golden handcuffs. I worked at the same company for 14 years. I had stocks. I had all the things. And really, I probably could have worked another, because I've been there for so long. I probably could have worked another 12 years or something and then retired pretty young. I'd be retired now, fuck.
Mhm.
But can I swear on this podcast? I wasn't even sure. First explicit episode.
Yeah. Yeah, director gave us a thumbs
Here
up.
we get it.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I won't go off. But yeah, it was a powerful moment of experiencing, which I think is a really powerful thing, is to like experience your own courage. I was thinking about this the other day, that there's not enough things you can read or consume, podcasts or anything, that will ever prepare you fully to leap into an abyss of what your soul is calling you towards but doesn't exist. And I kind of think about it like standing on a cliff. And this could be anything that leads you into the unknown. And most people don't realize that we get stuck on those cliffs because to the nervous system, anything that's different is coded as dangerous, even if it's better, even if it's more aligned. And so I found myself standing on this cliff hearing things like leap and the net will appear. And I thought, well, how do I know there's a net? Like, you're telling me to jump to my death. And that's what it feels like.
Mhm.
But I really started to see that the net requires the jump, because the jump says I trust in something greater than myself, greater than the sort of intellectual knowing of what will be a successful life or the right job
Mhm.
or the right relationship or whatever it is. And so when you leap, that's the act of trust. And then the net is there. It doesn't always feel like a net at first,
No.
though.
Feels
With some spikes in it.
Yeah, it
and-
feels like hitting some rocks or
Yeah, it can, and you're really in that unstabilized space where who you were and what you knew dies and is dying, and a whole version of possibility is opening up. And that's a very courageous liminal space between who you were and who you want to be. And most of us quit right there.
Mm.
And we go back.
I can relate, and I've seen this before with, friends, acquaintances, family. It's like emotionally I've made the decision to leap, but then I spend the next 8 months coming to terms with it, and I may
Yeah.
or may not actually do it. Right?
Yeah.
And then if I make a different decision, now I feel like regret, or I feel
Like a bit of shame.
a little bit of shame.
Yeah.
Like the door was there. Like, it's everything I wanted. Why didn't I do it? Like, well, I didn't, I don't know. I just didn't do it. I didn't have that courage in that moment, or someone convinced me otherwise, or do you know what I mean?
Yeah, it's almost like other people's limiting beliefs become our own. It's like if you get this intuitive sense to create something, I mean, who was I at 28? I was sitting down having pho with a friend of mine, and she said, "What would you want to do if you could do anything?" And she knew how passionate I was now about relationships. And I said, I'd tour the world and I'd talk about relationships. And she was like, amazing. So she was one of those people who could witness. But, when I went to quit pharma, my dad, God love him, was like, why don't you just take a leave of absence? And I was like, I get what he was saying, which is, I'm worried about you.
Yeah.
But I knew that I could just go get another job. But I was like, Dad, that's like saying I don't believe in myself. And so easily we can all go back into the narrow spaces and boxes that people have built around themselves. And which is not to shame anybody for living in a narrow, safe box, which only appears narrow to someone else who wants more. It's like I learned long ago that not everyone wants to be happy. It's just true. Not everybody wants exceptional work. Not everybody wants to love their work. Although I would argue on a deep level, we all wish for that. But there's some people, I have a friend who's like, hey, man, I know you want to change the world and do all the things. I just work so that I can travel.
Right.
And I was like, great. And I think sometimes when we see what's possible for our lives, we want everyone to see what's possible for their lives. And the only people who can are the people who are willing and are open and curious. And we spend a lot of time trying to change people who don't want to change. But that's actually not the best investment. And also, as we were saying, just you were alluding to before, is that we go and feel possibility, and then we get scared, and we get scared about judgment and thoughts of others, and we go back. And there's this great thought that Paul Selig says, in the voodoo. He's a channel. So, hey, right off the voodoo cliff, your
Yeah.
dad would be proud. He said, it's like being a fish living in an aquarium who learns about the ocean and goes back to the aquarium and pretends he doesn't know.
Oof.
Yeah.
Goosebumps.
That one kicked me right in the
Right?
soul.
I feel like that is a perfect mic drop. And I really want to get into the science of all this on the next episode. But people want to follow your channel or get in touch with you. What's the best way?
So if you want to consume more relationship content, it's at Create the Love on Instagram or createthelove.com. On LinkedIn, I write more about business related stuff, which is just under Mark Groves. And on my personal side, I express a lot more about more the business, relational, motivation, that kind of stuff on at It's Mark Groves.
Okay. Amazing. Well, stay tuned. Next episode, we're going to get into the science of this stuff. And Mark really blew my mind when he first educated me on some of this stuff. So I can't wait to share it with you guys next time. Stay tuned. Hey, thanks for watching The Culture Hack. Do you want to chat culture and engagement? Give us a call and come on the show.